Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, and look, we are sitting down with an icon. Everyone give it up for Ron Howard. All right, man, so we're gonna talk about a lot of things, but first off, you're here this year with a documentary.
Right, it's called Rebuilding Paradise.
And it's about the Paradise Fires.
Right, fires in Northern California where 95% of the town was burned down. And I happen to know something about that town because my mother-in-law had lived there until she passed. She'd lived there for about 5 years. And so I'd spent some time in Paradise, have a lot of family in Redding. They'd just gone through their own horrible fire.
Right.
My family came out unscathed, which was a relief. And then suddenly it hit Paradise and it started to become personal. And I wondered, you know, once the cameras leave, once the spotlight's off, then what's it like? What's left? How do you endure something like that? And so it became my first verite documentary. I did the Beatles 8 days a week.
Right, you've been doing documentaries.
I love them. They're fascinating to work on. But here's one where you have no idea what your story is really going to be.
So you just went down and fly on the wall for a while?
Yes. And
is it tough not to get involved in people's lives at that point?
Well, I think we all did in a way, but of course you also have to keep your, a measure of distance.
Yeah.
The thing that slowly but surely, I think we found individuals who were really showing up. They were the ones that were going to fight for this. And I think we took a lot of inspiration from that. And also they were willing to allow us to keep coming into their lives. And it wasn't always pretty what we were getting on camera. What was the worst
devastation that you saw that impacted? Most people see a news report and they're like, fires, that's terrible. But you saw homesteads erased, lives erased. They lost 85 lives.
They lost 85 lives, but I think the couple of things. They're not. I don't want to give away too much about the film, but when I first went into the Red Cross areas, the looks on kids' faces, not young kids. They were just sort of either oblivious or kind of stunned, but teenagers whose parents were just devastated.
Right.
And you could just see this 13, 14-year-old guy or girl thinks they have to carry the load now.
Right.
And that was very emotional to me. And also to see grown, capable people. Not people who'd made horrible decisions in their lives, people who'd done all the right things.
And still got
suddenly
punished.
So punished, so vulnerable. You kind of feel like, bad things can happen, but this is not what you believe your society, ought to have to cope with and navigate.
Now you've done two types of documentaries, one where you put it all together after the fact with footage and stuff, and then this cinema verite style.
Right.
Preference at this point?
Well, this is an adventure, but it's kind of a high wire act. I'm used to scripts, a plan, conversations with talented people, figure out what it is you want to do and go do it. And this is much more a matter of going in and finding the story. But the guy who turned me on to it, I was always inspired by Martin Scorsese. He makes great docs and makes great features. Spike, unbelievable. I would talk to them a little bit about it, but I was always afraid. The late, great Jonathan Demme was on the board of the Jacob Burns Film Center in Westchester County.
I know the Jacob Burns.
You do, and I'm wearing the hat because I'm on the board, and I love that place. But
Janet Maslin.
And I was at a board meeting, and I had an opportunity to do this behind-the-scenes look at this Jay-Z festival, Made in America. And I said, is that just audacious? Should I just not? Is that more than I could ever take on? He said, no way, go for it, and you got to feel like you have, your story, but you got to be ready to be wrong and figure out what it really is. And he just, of course, you knew Jonathan, I'm sure. I
didn't, but
what a great spirit. I mean, we miss him so much.
And there's also a guy who went from narrative to documentaries.
Yeah. And he also said, you don't have to give up your day job. I mean, you can still do scripted stuff because documentaries work on a different rhythm. It's very much about capturing and then post-production and then discovering it. So the adventure of it really excites me, and I plan to do more. But the full-time documentarians, the ones who live and breathe it, they are such cool customers. Because I'm saying, do you think we know what this is going to be yet? They say, yeah, we don't know. It's going to be great.
We'll figure it out.
But I think they've learned to understand something that I'm now learning from, and I think I'm even applying it to my scripted stuff, which is, kind of let the vibe speak to you. Let the spirit of what you're witnessing influence you even a little bit more. I think that's probably a good thing for my scripted work.
Staring at you as you're sitting there talking and absolutely hearing what you're saying, but as I look at you, I'm like, and you must get this a lot, I feel like, oh my Lord, we've known each other forever and this is the first time that we've met.
Yeah.
But like, by virtue of the fact that even though you're older than me, I've gotten to watch you grow up, so to speak. Right. I used to watch Andy Griffith, and then of course I was a big Happy Days kid and stuff. And then you aggregated into a career of making, thanks to like Roger Corman giving you a break and stuff like that, and you become one of the most well-known filmmakers on the planet. It occurs to me, you have never had a real job, have you?
No. You're so right.
Isn't that amazing? Just like a make-pretend life.
I'll tell you something. I was in my mid-20s. I was still on Happy Days,
right.
But I was working. I was doing TV movies and the Roger Corman stuff and the hiatus, and I was developing a script about fast food, a comedy, young people on fast food. I didn't know much about it. It was during the hiatus, so I grew my hair out long, grew whatever kind of mustache or beard that I could at that point, which was pretty pathetic. Had some glasses, and I started working at this McDonald's, and they let me just work there. Man, that was tough. I'm telling you,
in the real world.
I was really glad that I had this other gig.
Yeah. It's one thing to act like you're serving burgers. It's another thing to flip burgers.
I never got caught out though, except one time. So I was working the counter, and this is before you could just push a button and it would all add up. You had to do the math, which wasn't great for me, or the customers.
The guy who made a beautiful mind can't do math. Like that really
dirty little secret.
Hollywood.
I'm there and I'm trying to fill this lady's order, and she's kind of looking at me, and it was a pretty long order, kind of complicated, and I'm putting it in, and she leans in and she touches my hand and she says, "Hey, what happened? Did they cancel your show?" and I said, "Oh no, I'm actually here doing some research, but I'm really working and everything." And I finished it out, and then she looked at it and she said, "I said 2 quarter pounders." I'd screwed up.
And instantly it was unhappy days from there on in.
Absolutely.
As looking down the list of movies you've done, I realize how much of your creative DNA is mixed up in mine, man. For example, Night Shift is a movie I absolutely adored. We first got cable and it played ad nauseum, so I watched it constantly. It has a star-making Michael Keaton performance. You worked with Michael Keaton many times.
Who was here at the festival, I believe.
He's got a film here. I don't know if he's here, but he might be here.
Yeah.
And of course, Henry Winkler, who you'd worked with prior. Yeah. I loved that movie. It has one of my favorite moments in a movie history at all, where Michael Keaton is doing stream of consciousness, and he's just like, wait, what if we fed mayonnaise to the tuna? And he has a little tape recorder. He goes, "Call Starkist," and then goes like back to work and stuff. So much of what I wound up doing in movies comes from that. Comes also from one of my favorite films of all time, Splash.
Oh, well, thank you.
You brought
both written by Gans and Mandel.
Yes,
who were great. Who also
who
did
you worked
Parenthood.
with Parenthood as well.
Yeah.
You guys were like
they're
unstoppable.
remarkable.
But Splash is like I was a Bosom Buddies fan, so I knew Tom Hanks from there.
Yeah.
But this is like what creates the Tom Hanks that like we all know. Brand's Tom Hanks.
It was remarkable because we couldn't get any of the big stars that we were dreaming of. And he had actually come in for the part that John Candy eventually played.
So he was going to be the brother, the wacky brother.
Well, he didn't have the job yet, but he'd auditioned really well, and and they knew him from because he'd done a guest shot on Happy Days, and that was all on the same Paramount lot. So people knew this guy was, really had chops, but he was great in this audition. And he was such a cool customer. Finally, we knew we could get Daryl Hannah. The studio was excited about that, and we just couldn't figure out who Alan could be. And my assistant, Louise Avella, said, "Well, what about Tom Hanks? He's just so good." And Gans and Mandel had worked with him. They said, "He really is great." I brought him in and auditioned him now for the lead. He thought he was coming in for a callback, and I said, "No, these sides." And he just did not miss a beat. He's just killing it. And he's always been that. He's just a guy who's ready for bear. He's just ready to go. And I knew that he was just one of these guys. And it's been a thrill to be his friend, work with him occasionally, and also to be a fan. He just wound up contributing so much and growing. The other thing is, he was one kind of actor coming off Bosom Buddies and doing Splash. by the time I worked with him again, which was Apollo 13, he'd done so much and grown so much. And I said, oh my God, he no longer has to speak to be effective. He now like owns the scene when he's saying nothing. And he's conveying so much. And I think that's what really makes the greatest of the screen stars.
One of my favorite moments in Splash is a throwaway moment of his, and it's probably not in the script, and it has to be a directorial choice. They're escaping, and she's drying her legs, and so the fin is gone, and he's racing in the Jeep through the city, and he quickly looks over at her and like gives her this incredibly warm smile as the whole world is closing in on him. Such a magical moment. That movie is a movie that I've tried to replicate my whole life because it's funny as hell, and it has this amazing heart, and it could drag tears out of you at the same time.
You know, no one wanted to make it.
Why?
Well, when they read the script, for two reasons.
That's how angry I was.
Well, yeah. But because when they read the script, they said, this is too many different tones. What is it? Is it a slapstick comedy? Is it a romantic comedy? And I kept saying, it's all of those blended in a way that's going to be really organic and really work. And they just wouldn't buy it. Finally, Disney, which was then
Touchstone.
We were the first Touchstone
Very
movie.
first one, yeah.
And at that point they were making Herbie 8 and Gus the field goal kicking mule. But they took the leap.
Amazing. All right, let's jump up a little bit too. So, Cocoon, love Cocoon, gung ho. But I'm going to take you to Willow real quick. Willow is a movie that I've always loved, so much so that one of our dogs is named Mad Martin.
Oh, cool. Yes. That's a great name.
I just got to work with Val Kilmer in the last movie I made and stuff like that. Now I've heard there's like a Disney Plus series.
It's being developed. It's being developed right now. John Kasdan, who one of the writers on Solo, Larry and John wrote it. During the course of my period of time on Solo, he just kept letting me know how much he loved Willow, and George always believed it should be a TV show.
He wanted to.
He always thought it'd be fun to do that, and of course I got to reconnect with Warwick on Solo because he's always playing a million characters around, and which he's continued to be a real friend. I just have so much time for that guy. He's a great guy, and I just thought, wow, if they'd bring it back. Look, he's a really good actor. You saw him in the Ricky Gervais series. I mean, he's really, really good.
Absolutely.
And he'd be a different kind of Willow. And John has a great take on it. It's very contemporary, but still with that spirit. And just beginning to pitch stories and talk about it. Disney Plus seems very interested. Well, fingers crossed.
How wild to like revisit. It's one thing to do sequels in this world. How wild to revisit something. How many years? 25?
More.
30 years later?
30 years later.
And we're going back to work on Willow.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Well, that's the interesting thing, and we've even found it with Imagine Entertainment, Brian Grazer and I. Like, for example, we're developing another Friday Night Lights movie. So it was a movie,
and then it was
there's
a show.
A series, and now we hope it's a movie again. Or there's a Parenthood for Broadway that we're talking about. So there was a Parenthood movie, then it was a TV show, and now maybe. And so
2 TV shows, if I remember correctly.
You're dead right. You know your stuff. So there is something really interesting about kind of the idea is the IP, and so we always talk about that as though that means it's serialized or superhero or hyper genre.
Right.
But it can just be the spirit of something and the right idea. And because of all of this, because of technology, because of the broadening of the audiences, the globalization of it all, there are just more and more reasons to find value in these things, and you actually can do something new with them. Mm-hmm. It's not just regurgitation. This Willow, I mean, it'll use the world, but it's a very different feel. Different. Well, he hopes very much the same tone of humor. In fact, that's what he wants.
A dream come true for those of us who saw it in the theater, and then to hear what again? Thank the Lord.
I hope we get to do it.
You brought up Parenthood, and I absolutely love Parenthood. Parenthood's not only a movie that infected my work and something to reach for. It kind of positioned me in life. I went on to be married one day and have a kid, and that movie is perfect training for eventually heading into that world. And that was once again
Gans and Mandel and Brian, and that was, I think, probably the most personal film that I've ever done because we were all going through it. Our kids were sort of that range of ages between the four of us, and a lot of the stories just came right out of our lives.
How's Steve Martin to work with?
He's a blast, and in this case, he's a great writer, but he so loved their script. I don't think he changed a word. The only thing he did there's this moment where his son, who's struggling, he's a very introverted kid and kind of awkward athlete, and he's had problems, and somebody hits a pop fly to him, and it's will he catch it or not?
Right.
And it's a crucial moment in the game. My brother plays the horrible Little League parent. He's saying, he has no business being out there. All improvised by my brother Clint.
Right. He didn't respect the script.
No,
he just
didn't,
made
man.
stuff up.
Clint doesn't respect a lot of things. God bless him.
Right.
But Steve said, when he makes the catch, I've got to run. And if you could I want to run to my son and pick him up, and I don't want to show it to you, just trust me. And I got 3 cameras that day, and lined them up, and he did it one time, but it's the most hilarious thing. He's running, he's on his knees, he's jumping, he's spinning.
It's pure joy.
It's pure joy, and it was a brilliant stroke.
Oh my Lord, that's awesome. All right, we're gonna hit you with a few quick questions, then let you get out of here. This is the Sundance speed round. We'll get to as many as we can. Ready? A prop you wish you stole from set, any set.
My slingshot from the Andy Griffith Show.
I'm gonna cry.
Wish I had it on my desk.
What do you think happened to it?
Oh, tossed in the trash.
Oh my Lord, man. That's heartbreaking and beautiful. One movie everyone should see.
Well, for me, it's always I always go back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Really?
Well, to me, it just says so much about individuality, institutionalization, not just psychiatric, but sort of on a community level, standing for something. The sort of the unexpected hero, the surprises. You can't judge a book by its cover. There's so many things, and it's funny and smart.
An excellent poll, and nobody ever talks about it anymore. Excellent job. Last thing you binged. You watch a lot of stuff. I see your Instagram and your Twitter account all the time.
I do watch a lot of stuff. Barry.
Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah, second season was great too, and I just watched it. Cheryl and I watched it all the way through.
And so, I watch it, I'm like, yeah, I like all these people and stuff. You watch it, you're like, I know that guy.
I know that guy, and he's great. And I'm also so happy for him because
he killed it.
He's just a tremendous artist, great actor with a great heart, and it's fantastic. Look, he's done a lot of great stuff, including his little turn on Arrested Development, which we all appreciate.
That's what I mean. Honestly, Arrested Development is the soundtrack of my life for the last 10 years. It's a show that I go to sleep to. I love it so much and stuff. So I hear your voice all the time. But touching back on Henry Winkler, you were the first guy that let him be not the Fonz. In Night Shift, he plays completely against type at that point.
And he had the choice because he was the reason the movie got made. So when he said yes to the movie, we got a pre-sale from CBS and other things came together, and suddenly it was a go movie. Everybody liked the script, but we didn't have the cast to make it go. He made it go, and he trusted me, which meant a lot to me. But I came to him and I said, you can play either part. And I think the studio probably wanted him to play the part that Michael Keaton played.
Yeah.
He said, I feel like I've done versions of that, and people will judge it, compare it to the Fonz, and it can never compare. I'd rather be this guy. I relate to this guy. And then we found Michael Keaton because Lowell Gans had directed an episode of the show he did with Jim Belushi, Working Stiffs.
Yes.
And he said, this guy has chops. He's not a star, but he will make you laugh. And I remember in our first rehearsal, we were working, and Michael was kind of nervous and anxious, but he was good, hilarious, always great. And Henry turns to him and grabs him, and in the Fonz voice, he says, "You better be funny." And Michael went like that, and he was. He delivered.
He took that advice for the rest of his career, man. You made a beautiful mind, but my Lord, you've had a beautiful career. Give it up for Ron Howard, ladies and gentlemen.
Pleasure to talk to you.